Well, guys, um, this sucks. So, how do I put this? Um, I went to the junkyard, salvage yard, about 2.5 weeks ago to pull parts off of a '89 Grand Wagoneer. It's a tan or sand one. Got some good stuff in from that thing, all that I could afford. Um, the guy who wants to buy everything off me, though, is like a real fuddy-duddy. It's like, people are just really unreliable. But anyway, to the point, I noticed when I left the house that day, because this is a 98 Grand Cherokee 5.9 Limited, so it has all the sensors, everything fully loaded for 98. And it was telling me that the coolant was low in the reservoir, so I filled it up. Little odd, because it was kind of almost empty completely. Filled it up, and didn't think anything of it. Drove over there, came back home, everything was fine. And then the second trip I made to town, same thing, coolant level low. I had to fill it up again. So then I'm like, so drove to town, came back home, parked it, didn't have anything to do for the next 3 or 4 days, so it's kind of just been sitting. So when I was about to drive it, I decided to pull the the dipstick, and yeah, it's like maybe 3 inches above the full line. So immediately I knew that the coolant was getting into the oil. The dipstick was clean, fresh, clean oil, because I just did an oil change. And what's weird is the oil change that I just did, it was perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. So this just happened. I guess my head gasket blew on this Jeep. I decided to pull the oil plug, and as soon as I pulled it out of the hole, just like water squirted out of it. It wasn't a milkshake consistency yet, so I guess it hasn't really like mixed with the oil, but a ton of water came out of it. So I let the water drain out for like 3 seconds or whatever, and I put the oil plug back in to save my oil, at least for now. And yeah, oil levels back to normal, but I have a bad head gasket. I took my head gasket tester that I have. It's like a little bulb that you put in, with this blue liquid on the radiator after you drain like 3 inches of the radiator out, and immediately turned yellow. So I decided to pull the spark plug wires one by one. Each time I pull a spark plug wire, you let it breathe for a few minutes to get all the combustion gases out of the radiator, and then you test it again. And the whole idea of this is to stop whatever cylinder is leaking into the radiator from creating combustion gas, when you unplug the spark plug wires. And that way you can kind of narrow it down to see which cylinder has a bad head gasket, or which side of the head, the left side or the driver's side. And I narrowed it down to cylinder number 7, which is I believe that's the the driver's side. Correct me if I'm wrong. Driver's side, rear cylinder. So that cylinder is where the head gasket is bad. And as I was testing it, it was just pushing bubbles through my tester without me even really, using the ball to suck the air out of it. So definitely putting air into the system. So that really sucks. And it makes me wonder, have I had this head gasket problem for years now and just never really noticed it because it was really, really small? Because I noticed for the last like 3.5 years, 4 years, I'd have to put like coolant into the reservoir every like maybe 4 months. It was a really slow leak, but I chalked it up to one of the freeze plugs, because the freeze plug was kind of dripping slowly, small drip, and it could just be the freeze plug still, and the head gasket just blew, randomly that time, a week ago. But that really sucks. I don't have white exhaust, coming out, anything like that. The engine sounds just fine. No knocking, no ticking. And another thing I kind of noticed is the oil pressure is slightly lower than it used to be. Instead of like 40 psi driving, it's kind of like 35ish or whatever. It usually sits between 30 and 40 anyway. But you know, I just kind of noticed that stuff. So yeah, that sucks. Compression is still good, and oil pressure is still good, so the engine is still good. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the head gasket is bad. So I just don't have the time or the money right now to rip apart the entire engine and remove the head. And so I just bought some stuff called K-Seal. I really don't like putting, you know, fixes in a bottle in your, you know, radiator or whatever, but what's the worst that could happen? It could plug up my radiator and I have to buy another radiator. I mean, I'm tearing the whole friggin', you know, apart anyway, so put the K-Seal in there and bam. As I was driving it, the torque converter doesn't lock up anymore either. So now I have a bad transmission, or at least a bad torque converter, and a blown head gasket. So what the F? What kind of crap luck is that? So the torque converter, everything was fine, and then boom, right after my oil change, everything just went to shit. So that really sucks, because I just spent a lot of time and money in replacing the transfer case, drive shafts, U-joints, and all of that fun stuff, and then the bumper and all that, and I was just about to get new tires, and bam. So, you know, I guess I am just not having any luck at all. And then the axle shaft on the Grand Wagoneer driver's side is floating, meaning I can pull it in, out, and it's smacking against the wheel cap right here. So that means the retaining nuts that hold the bearing or the axle shaft on the bearings probably worked themselves loose, or a snap ring broke, allowing the U-joint axle shaft to free float. So that sucks. And on top of that, it's warmer outside, 85 degrees, and my J10 is basically overheating if it sits idle. So it gets up to like 230, you know, 235 degrees if you let it sit idle for like, you know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Once you start driving, temperature drops back down. So I narrowed it down to the clutch fan that needs to be replaced. For some reason, the clutch fan is spinning slower when the engine gets hotter, where it should be spinning faster when it's hotter, not the opposite. So the clutch fan is bad. So and all three of these vehicles I need. You know, if one breaks, I can just drive the Wagoneer, but now I can't drive the Wagoneer because of the axle shaft. You know, I can't drive the J10. I did today, but I got to be mindful of the temperature. So it's like, fuck. Someone is putting some voodoo bad juju on me. I don't know what's going on, but this really sucks. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody.